Welcome to Kdrama School Podcast. I'm your host, Grace Jung. I'm a stand-up comedian living in Los Angeles, and I am a PhD candidate in cinema media studies at UCLA. And I'll be graduating in 6 months from now. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I specialize in Korean TV studies, among other things like Asian American media history, gender studies, sexuality studies, and industry studies. But enough about me. Let me now introduce you to my trusty sidekick, who is a comedian originally from Argentina, and she is currently based in Berlin. Please welcome Julieta de Geze. Hi, Julieta.
Oh, hi. Thanks for the clapping. Oh my God, what an audience. Thank you so much. I don't have so many degrees as you. I just sell dildos at a store.
It's a very honest job.
It's an honest, someone has to do it. It's Christmas, someone has to sell it. Wait, what are you going to do now?
This is what I'm doing now. This is what I'm doing. I'm putting my degree into a podcast, yes. So I know that there's some other great K-drama podcasts out there, but this is the only podcast on Korean dramas that you're going to get where the host has a PhD in cinema media studies. Yeah.
There's I heard of people. I was like, where is my podcast with a PhD person? I heard a lot. I think the audience for this is going to be enormous.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate your belief in me. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. So let me get into the concept of this podcast. The concept is that I talk about a specific Korean drama from start to finish in every episode of this podcast. In each episode, I'm gonna be talking about a new Korean drama, and I do a deep dive textual analysis of every show, and I'm gonna be contextualizing that show in terms of its cultural significance, historical significance, and whatever else, phenomenological significance, whatever else, and the things that I share will be coming from my own personal experience because I grew up on a steady diet of Korean TV shows, including like variety shows, sitcoms, and serialized dramas since like the early 1990s. And I'm a Korean-born Korean American. I was born in Korea, and I immigrated to the States when I was very young. So I'm going to be integrating a lot of that other cultural context from my own life, which, maybe you get from some of the podcasts, but maybe you don't. You most likely don't. So my doctoral dissertation is it's an industry study on the Korean variety show, and I look at masculinity, queerness, and nationalism. Doesn't that sound enticing? And so the papers I'm currently writing on, they are about Korean dramas, and I hope that the papers will eventually become my second book after my dissertation gets published. So you can say that I know some things about Korean dramas, okay? Right? And I will tell you right off the bat, spoiler alert, like major spoiler alert. Every single episode of this podcast will contain spoilers because I'll be covering one entire Korean TV show from beginning to end, okay? And I'll be covering serialized narrative TV shows, not documentaries, not variety shows, not Korean film, okay? I'm concentrating on mini-series, Korean mini-series, all right? So I'll be covering all 16 or 20 or 24 episodes, however many there are, okay? So please follow along to this podcast after you've seen the show, or if you just want to listen to this podcast without ever watching the show. Either way, it's fine. Either way, it's going to be entertaining. It's going to be enticing. It's going to be interesting. All right. And I know that plenty of you listeners out there, you've binge watched Korean dramas throughout this pandemic. Even before the pandemic, you've been binging on K-dramas, on Netflix, on Hulu, on Viki, on Drama Fever. Rest in peace, Drama Fever. All right? You've been streaming them for the last decade at least. Okay? So welcome to K-Drama School, and class is now in session. This K-drama is a hit show called Sky Castle. Came out in 2018, and it's written by Yoo Hyun-mi. And Sky Castle is Yoo Hyun-mi's first cable TV drama. Before this, her work was mostly picked up by public and commercial broadcasters. And Yoo Hyun-mi has another JTBC drama coming out this year called Snowdrop, or 설강화, starring the very attractive, I love this guy, very attractive Jung Hae-in and Blackpink member Kim Jisoo. It's very, very exciting stuff. And so Yoo Hyun-mi's script is going to be helmed by director Cho Hyun-tak, who she collaborated with for Sky Castle. And I think that's something to look forward to. So Sky Castle is one of the few TV dramas that I got to see from the beginning to like almost to the end, because it was airing while I was in Korea. I happened to be in Korea at the time. I was in Seoul in late 2018, and I was conducting field work for my dissertation. And I just so happened to be watching JTBC at the time when this first episode started playing. And oh my God, the pilot episode, I mean, at first I was like, okay, like, what is this? Like, okay, whatever. And then, like, the ending of that pilot episode was so intense. Like, a woman takes a shotgun and blows her head off in the pilot episode. I know. It's very high stakes. I was like, what? Oh, my God. Huh?
Is it like you can see her, like, shadow doing that, or you can see the whole thing happening?
You don't see the whole thing. You see a close-up of her face looking very distressed, and she puts the gun under her chin. And then you hear a loud bang. It's like, it's awful. But I remember like yelling, like in my apartment. I was just like, oh my God. I had a friend staying with me at the time, and she like ran out of the bathroom like, what happened? And I was like, I can't. This is so intense. This drama became number one, like the highest rated drama of its time. And only recently, like this year, it got beat. It got beat by this other JTBC drama. But like Sky Castle is number 2 highest rated cable TV series as of December 2020. So like the show starts out with this lavish opulence. Sky Castle is a name of a rich townhouse. It's a neighborhood of upper middle class mothers who happen to all be married to doctors. They're all married to doctors. And everybody's a helicopter parent to their high school children. But as the show progresses, you start to see all the dirt, obviously, right? Like, that's the juice, right? Like a woman blowing her head off. Like, come on, like, what's going on? And, like, people who celebrate their kids' acceptance to get into great schools, they all end up killing themselves or driving their parents to suicide or committing suicide. It's intense. So, like, as of now, like, a lot of K-drama fanatics, you would know, especially in romance dramas, for the most part, like, the virtuous good girl, right? She gets the rich guy. They live happily ever after. And I say nowadays because not all romantic Korean dramas had that ending. In fact, a lot of Korean dramas, like, you know, maybe 20 years ago, a little more, they used to kill off the virtuous good girl. She would always get cancer and she would die, you know, after going through a horrible time. Like, all these struggles, they would kill her off at the end. It was awful. But, like, in the case with Sky Castle, imagine this. Imagine if the evil girl got the rich guy, married him, and then had a couple of kids with him. And then imagine if the evil girl is now the protagonist of the show as the mother, who is obsessed with restoring her honor, title, wants recognition from her husband and her in-laws, and she's grooming her children into becoming the next generation of doctors for the family. And imagine that this evil girl hid her real identity as a poor working class girl with an alcoholic father, misogynistic family members. Just imagine that, okay? And she just lied her way into marriage with this doctor guy with like a horrible rich mother. Everybody at Sky Castle, they all want 3 generations of doctors, right? It's like the mother is like, their father-in-law was a doctor, their current husband is a doctor, and they want their children to become a doctor. It's like the 3 generation of doctors is like the key goal here. It's the obsession with this people, and nobody knows why. That's the fucked up thing. Nobody knows if being a medical professional is even their passion. Nobody cares, okay? In fact, there's this one scene when a chief of surgeon asks one of the residents why he became a doctor, and then the resident replies, because my mom told me to. It's so sad. It's so sad. And this encapsulates the thesis statement of the show, right? Striving for the highest goals in life, but without knowing why. It's an empty pursuit just because someone says it's the best thing to be. And so the show acts as a very sharp critique of codependent parent-children relationships. And it's also a critique of Korean society's hyper-competitiveness and uses middle-aged women and their children as tools to present that, which I found very unique. Especially because like all the protagonists of the show are middle-aged women. You know, they hired a lot of middle-aged actresses, which is very rare, honestly. And yet it became the highest rated cable TV series of all time. And so the protagonist of this show is played by Yeom Jung-ah. She plays a woman named Ha Seo-jin, who is an education-obsessed mother. And she has two daughters. And she has one in high school, the other one's in middle school. And Seo-jin is obsessed with her high school daughter Ye-seo's education. Her entire life goal is to get her daughter Ye-seo into Seoul National Medical School. That's it. That's it. And Ye-seo, her daughter, is a nightmare. She's a nightmare of a brat. Oh my God. She's extremely self-centered, driven, ambitious, has no friends, of course, because she's obsessed with getting the right answers every time over everybody else. You know those people, right, Julieta? You've done improv before, right?
Yeah, oh, those people. Yes, and oh, what a pain in the ass.
So Seo-jin hires an education coordinator. They call her Kodi for short. And this coordinator, this teacher is named Kim Ju-young, who has this stellar record of getting high school students admitted into medical school. And all the rich moms are obsessed with hiring her because she's very exclusive. She only takes on 2 students at a time. Her fees cost up to millions of dollars. And this woman, Kim Ju-young, trains and monitors Ye-seo's study habits and schooling like a hawk. She gives advice on the temperature of the desk, temperature of the room. She tells Seo-jin to take down any stupid paintings off the wall from her daughter's room and just put up a painting of Mondrian to help stimulate her mind. Kim Ju-young trains Ye-seo and mentors her in this meditation room. But like really what she's doing is poisoning her with hyper competitiveness and manipulates this young high school girl's inferiority complex and greed to make her even more driven. So now Ye-seo has this rival in her school. The rival girl's name is Hina, and Hina comes from a really poor background. Okay, born to a single mother. The mother dies of illness, and Hina finds out that Ye-seo's doctor dad is actually her dad. So this is where shit gets juicy. Exactly. So and Ye-seo's dad doesn't know that Hina is his daughter for most of the show. And so Ye-seo's younger sister, who's in middle school, her younger sister's name is Yebin. She starts taking a liking to Hina and then asks her mom, Seo-jin, if she could be her tutor. So Hina moves in with the family. And Hina's goal is to take down Ye-seo, who is overly privileged, gets a lot of help for her studies, but is ultimately inferior to Hina, okay? And when Ye-seo's performance starts to debilitate because she can't get over her hateful obsession with Hina, Kim Ju-young cheats and then gives the exam questions to Ye-seo in advance. And then Hina finds out about this and starts, threatening Kim Ju-young with exposing her. And then Kim Ju-young fucking kills Hina. She kills her. What I love about Sky Castle is the music. The theme song, We All Lie, is sung by Hajin, and the lyrics are very cheesy. Oh my gosh. But the song slaps. So the other thing I love about this show is the fact that it's not a romantic drama. Like, of course, I love romantic dramas as much as we all do, but like we'll get into those in the later episodes. But this particular drama, it's about parental obsession with their children and parents using their children as vehicles to confirm their egos. There's this small ceramic sculpture of a mother holding her child very close to her, like close to her face, like holding her like this, face and chest. And it looks, the ceramic sculpture looks very phallic, actually. And symbolically, I thought it was a really brilliant inclusion because while a mother and child are not necessarily phallic, in order to attain power in any patriarchal society, historically, women in that society had to give birth to children. They typically had to give birth to sons to carry on the name. And in modern day, of course, having a son or a daughter in Korea, like Korea will take any child, especially because the nation's birth rate has been in a decline for about 10 years now, and the government's freaking out over this. It's a very dangerous psychological game to put all your personal eggs into one basket and making that basket your child. That's quite literally how you create problems for your kid and for yourself and for everybody in your family and your social circle. So the show's critique of this hyper-competitive Korean society and its very high suicide rate also, like Korea has one of the highest suicide rates in the world. And the country's been dealing with low birth rate, extremely competitive job market, working hours are very high, rate of satisfaction and happiness in Korea is very low, and yet working pressure and school pressures are extremely high. So of course, like suicide rates, of course they would be high. So let me give you like an anecdotal example and some background. I was born in Busan, South Korea, and my parents and I moved to Brooklyn when I was 5. And we were undocumented citizens for almost 12 years until I finally got my green cards, and my father became a naturalized citizen for like just 2 weeks before my 18th birthday. So I couldn't visit my home country or see anybody in my family for like close to 13 years. And ever since I got my US passport, I try to visit my relatives every couple of years. And whenever I go, I stay with my aunts, uncles, or cousins. And I'll tell you this, the adults who work, they work like 6 days out of the week. They go to work every day, very early in the morning, and they don't come home until very late at night. The kids, they wake up very early to go to school, and then I don't see them until very late at night. And this was the case for pretty much every single relative of mine. So I spent most of my time with the stay-at-home moms, whether they were my aunts or cousins. And the rest, I hardly ever saw them. Okay, I only saw them like on holidays or Sundays for dinner. So living in Korea is similar to living in New York. Like you need to really work in order to live. And it's only in recent years that Korean President Moon Jae-in limited Korea's working hours and reduced it down to 52 hours per week, which is still relatively a lot.
Because everyone's like doing 40, 52, is it like?
Exactly. Like 40 would be typical. And yet 52 hours is what they reduced it to, saying that the working hours were inhumane. So and they only did that like about 2 years ago. Yeah. So I want
to complaining or like.
Well, yeah, of course, people were complaining. People were killing themselves. I mean, that's a big complaint. What did you say? That's a grievance, right? Like jumping off a bridge, offing yourself, right? So I want to talk briefly about some of the transgressive characters on this show, the ones who express rebellion. And my absolute favorite character on this show is Yebin. Unlike her school-obsessed older sister Yeseol, Yebin has a mind and a mouth of her own, and she stands out as one of the very few people at Sky Castle who doesn't buy into this hyper-competitive, egomaniacal ritual of overstudying and kissing ass. She wants nothing to do with that, and she does a lot of calling out throughout the show, which is so refreshing. But she also harbors some pain of neglect because her overdriven mother is mostly concentrating her attention onto her older sister, Yeseol. And Yeseol, her dream is to get into Seoul National Medical School, and her mother's dream is the same. So Yebin is somewhat neglected and expresses some painful rebellion a little bit in the show. Another thing about this show is the representation of disability. Which is a little bit sad. Like the teacher of this show, Kim Ji-young, the reason why she's so fucked up is because she has a history of her own. So she herself was a very brilliant person, but she has this inferiority complex with a nemesis. And she gives birth to her own daughter, and her daughter turns out to be a prodigy, like an 8-year-old who gets into college, right? As an elementary school student, she gets into college in America and is like in school full of like white kids who are like 10 years older than herself. So imagine the pressure, but the brilliance too. And unfortunately, this prodigy daughter becomes mentally disabled after suffering a head injury in a car accident, which Kim Ji-young caused. So Kim Ji-young was trying to kill her husband off, who wanted to take her daughter away. I read about I read about the actress who plays Kay, the Catherine on this show, the mentally disabled child of Kim Ji-young, and the actress's name is Cho Min-ya, and she gained 40 pounds, 18 kilograms, in order to portray Kay. And like Kay is found like scribbling on a window, and she's like in this clear window encasement of this really very modern building where like Kim Ji-young keeps her daughter in, and it's like a freak show put on display, which is really sad. And you see Kay scribbling math equations obsessively and aimlessly on the window. It's like very like A Beautiful Mind-esque. And like I found this very like allegorical and similar to how the children and parents on this show are obsessed with studying aimlessly, like the way Kay is scribbling aimlessly and obsessively, right? Like the parents are also obsessed and aimless in their desire to get their children into just one box, into medical school. So I thought it was just a really great allegorical embodiment. But I did find the depiction of mental disability a little bit disappointing on this show. The music and mise-en-scène, huh?
It was not a good portray of like what mental illness is.
Yeah, like especially like the music and like the mise-en-scène, it would very frequently portray Kay as very menacing and frightening, and somebody to be kept at a distance, and I found that a bit unfortunate. I mean, later in the last episode there's some redemptive qualities, but it's like, I mean, who cares, like for like 19 episodes, Kay was shown in a very poor light. So the show does a good job at capturing Kim Ji-young's anxiety and shame and regret at the sight of her disabled daughter. But I do find that frequency of this portrayal of a mentally disabled person a little bit problematic. But it's interesting how this character, Kay's brilliance, is also shown in the form of disability, right? Like a kept child who's trapped because of the mistakes her parents made. So the kicker is that Kim Ji-young has been the one behind all the deaths and suicides of these other children, other families' children, by manipulating their minds and emotions and creating strife between families. And as entertaining as this plotline is, the fact is in Korean society, there's no one teacher who's destroying people's lives and families, right? Like, it's just, that's not an apt place to place blame because, and of course this is a TV show, right? Let's not forget. Because the fact is the capitalist system is what drives people to become obsessed with image, status, and money, okay? Like in any capitalist society, the people, the 1%, anybody who's at the top, the upper echelons, they're the ones that are obsessed with these three things: image, status, and money. And these ego-driven aspirations are what people are driven to despair with. And that's sort of the moral plot of the show. The moral element of the show. There's this scholar, Josiah Gabriel Hunt, who holds a PhD in education, and he published a paper on South Korean students' suicide mortality. He published this in 2015, so a few years before Sky Castle started to air. And in that paper, he writes that 97% of Koreans have gone to high school. They have a high school education. But not too long ago, that number used to be less than 5% of the population. So imagine, like, that jump is extraordinarily high. Of the 97% of that high school educated Korean population, 80% go to college. That is a very high number. And so Hunt says that South Korea has become, and quote unquote, I put this in quote, one of the developed world's most violent against one's self. Okay? Because students who commit suicide in Korea, they're as young as 9 years old. And it's the leading cause of death of individuals between 9 and 24. Suicide is the leading cause of death. And Korea's got one of the highest suicide rates in the world, as I said. And they've been holding this terrible record for many years now, for a very long time. And Hunt argues that the pressure placed on students to get into the top 3 universities, okay? So Seoul National University, Korea University, Yonsei, which is what Sky is the acronym for it, those three schools. The top three universities, that's the marker of success that builds pressure. And when students don't get into these schools, they feel like a failure and they commit suicide. Okay, so Hunt calls Korea this quote unquote face saving society. Again, there's this emphasis on image and status, as we mentioned. And education in South Korea is part of what makes this country one of the top world economies today. But, it comes at a price, right? And it's very shocking compared to what Korea was like just a few decades ago. Just a few decades ago, Korea was nothing like this. Korea was war torn, less than 100 years ago. So Hunt claims that Korea's reached a state of unhealthy, quote unquote, education obsession. And if you think about what high pressure studying involves, right, it often involves lack of sleep, especially in old school Korean TV, like getting a nosebleed while studying. Okay. This was fetishized as a good thing, something to brag about. It was an indication that one is studying a lot. But the fact is, when the brain doesn't get sleep regularly, it suffers, the body suffers, and that leads to all kinds of mental and emotional problems. And this could be a contributor of suicides, lack of sleep. It could be as simple as that, lack of sleep. That's why they're reducing work hours, down to 52. Of course, it should be.
I think, I mean, I don't want to, but maybe like a good nap, like between reads, like just like Spain does it, just have from 1 to 5, like nap time.
1 to 5? A 4-hour nap?
Well, yeah, you have to, yeah, because you quit work, like you stop work, then you go home, you have a little like snack, then you watch a little
like
I
a
don't know,
siesta?
series, like the siesta is the whole thing. It's not just a siesta; it's like a whole ritual.
It's a part of embedded culture in Spain and in Latin America, eh?
Yeah, that's why we have very poor like economic. Like our economy is always very bad. I do blame siesta for it. It's not because politicians are corrupt. It's just the siesta. But maybe for Korea it's a good thing.
Yeah, Korea needs a little siesta. I agree. I genuinely agree, because when the body's not well rested, it's not healthy and it's not functioning optimally. So I feel like this needs correcting, right? But this correction, it can't take place in isolation, right? Reducing work hours to 52 a week is one thing, but changing the overall mindset in Korean society, that needs to take place too. So I feel like what you're saying about the siesta thing is quite relevant. I do. And obsessively and unhappily working doesn't necessarily lead to a happy and fulfilled life. I feel like that's another moral element that this show has. So this has been shown in Korea time and time again, for many years now, right? Like, a lot of people don't know this, but one of the daughters of Samsung, she was a student at NYU and she committed suicide. Like, think about it, one of the wealthiest, right? Like one of the wealthiest people in the country hurls herself off a building because of her unhappiness and her psychological despair. Think about that. So this is a very subtle critique in Sky Castle, but another critique that it has is the fact that Yeseo's family, they're Christian. Okay, and there's a book by William E. Connolly called Capitalism and Christianity, American Style. And philosophers and scholars for many years, they've been writing about how well Christianity fits in with capitalism. They're like, two peas in a pod. And think about Genesis in the Bible, like in Genesis, the punishment placed on Adam after he, betrays God by eating the fruit, the knowledge of good and evil. God says, you will suffer in order to eat for the rest of your life, for the rest of your days. So that's the curse that God places on mankind by saying you need to work in order to live. And the idea of reaping what you sow, right? Like, this isn't just about like somebody getting their just desserts. It's also, it comes up a lot in the Bible. It's also about a very literal qualifying of capitalism. You reap only what you sow, okay? So hard work is normalized in the Christian doctrine. Reaping what you sowing is normalized. And what Sky Castle doesn't question is, of course, the problem of the larger system, but the small hints dropped on, like, through the mise-en-scène, like Yesa's family being Christian, Youngest family. The Youngest family is the mother who shoots herself through the head. She's Youngest mom. Yeah, their family's also Christian, and this is very subtle, but it's visible in the mise en scène if you observe carefully. On the other hand, if you think about the other major religion in Korea, think about what Buddhism teaches us. Being is lovable. And it's not based on what you achieve, but simply because you are. You are a being, and therefore you're lovable. It has nothing to do with achievements or any of that, because Buddhism, it accepts imperfection. It accepts rest, peace, mindfulness. Okay, and in Korea today, the majority of the population, they have no religion at all. Okay, but the other two majority are Christians and Buddhists. It's split almost evenly. Okay, but the number of Christians continue to grow every year. Okay, so there's less mindfulness practice in Korea. And I grew up Protestant. Okay, my maternal side of the family are Buddhist. My grandmother's Buddhist. A lot of my aunts are Buddhist, but I was raised Christian. I don't know why.
They were like, we're going to fuck you over. Bye bye.
I made a lot of friends, while going to church with my parents as a child, but I also really hated going to church throughout my adolescent years because of this constant comparison I was subject to. Like, oh, so and so studies so well. So and so got a really high score on the SATs. So and so got into a really great college. I fucking hated that noise. Okay. And I went to church every single week, twice a week, every Friday, every Sunday for like 13 years straight. That's all we did. And I don't personally think there's anything inherently wrong with Christianity, okay? I don't think any religion is wrong. But over the years, over the 2 decades that I spent attending church, I did find it to be a very toxic space, because like, yeah, like I really hated all that talk, all that noise when I went to church as a elementary student, middle school student, high school. Like throughout all those years, that's all they ever did is compare students and make them feel like crap. So like that's sort of the reason why I'm returning to my indigenous roots and studying Buddhism again and trying to reconnect with my aunt and my grandmother. It's like a method of also practicing decoloniality. Okay, because let's not forget that Christianity is a Western religion, okay? And it's often used as a vehicle for colonial and neo-colonial purposes. That's a fact, okay? South Korea is a neo-colony to the U.S. So my return to Buddhism is not just a way to heal from some of the strains and tensions that I've dealt with going to a Korean American church, but it's also a way to rebuild my relationships with relatives. Okay, and I was pretty much encouraged to write them off because at church I was taught to look down on anyone else who wasn't a Christian. Okay, like I feel like church does that. It says if they're not Christian, they're inferior, they're doomed to burn in hell, they're not saved, they're heathens. But the fact is, like, I became an atheist at age 22. And, even up until like very recently, I felt very spiritually bankrupt. Okay, because, Christianity is a religion, but it's also a way to like nurture your spirituality. And when I was going to temple with my aunt whenever I visited Korea, or like reconnecting with my Eastern religion and roots, that made me feel more whole and nourished, and it opened up some ways of possibility for me. And quite frankly, Buddhism gives me a sense of peace and hope that I was never able to attain as a Christian. Okay, and a church, because that space just taught me more about greed, contention, conflict. There was a lot of trauma, like physical abuse, mental and emotional abuse. That was always happening at church for me throughout the years I was growing up. So a spiritual house, right, I think is a place where the soul goes to rest. But at church, my soul, all it suffered was more school related competition and egos and all of that. And I really didn't like it. And as soon as I got away from church, okay, like, I started to sort of depart from church when I was in college, my focus on my studies improved. Okay, and I excelled in college. I got a Fulbright. I translated books, wrote books. I'm finishing up my doctorate now. So I'm just saying, like, this is what worked for me personally. Again, I'm not saying that people shouldn't be Christian. I'm just critiquing that Christianity and capitalism work hand in hand, and that there's a pattern, there's a trend. And this is something that sociologists study. A lot of people study this. So
In any high school, like I didn't learn anything about this culture when I was like learning about the world, let's say. So if you really want to know, you have to like have some you need to like figure it out by yourself because no one is going
yeah,
to teach you.
yeah, I think that's a good point. Like you have to make effort to learn things, to dig deep and learn about things. And I think that comes, I feel like that's purposeful living, right? Like that is you trying to know more about yourself and how you fit in with the world. And I think that's something to learn about. So I feel like those kinds of questions are good questions, right? Like if you're a student and you're feeling pressure to succeed, right? I think asking yourself first, like, what are your stakes in pursuing an education? Why do you want to learn, right? Not what do you want to be, but what do you want to learn? And then what do you want to do with your education? Again, I'm not asking what do you want to be. I'm asking what do you want to do with your education? What seems purposeful? And what brings you joy in life? I think those are important questions to start asking, especially if you're in high school and college. And whatever point in life you are, where you're at, and you're just starting to like come into this. Instead of just rote learning and doing something because somebody else tells you to do it, really ask yourself with intent, what is this all about? What am I all about? And in church, like when I was a kid, everybody kept telling everybody to go and be a pharmacist. Like they weren't even that ambitious actually. This was like a B grade church. They weren't like go be a doctor and a lawyer. They were like no, be a pharmacist, Like also just suggesting to a kid and being like limit your dreams to being a pharmacist. I think that's so hilarious. Like it was like be ambitious, but also kind of like try and coast, take it easy. Like go becoming a doctor or a lawyer takes like 8 years minimum. But like a pharmacist, a college education will just give you a pharmacy like degree. And pharmacists get paid really well. They get paid a lot of money.
Really? Like I see different generations. For instance, the generation of my mom, and I see that generation. No matter where you go in the world, they were all studying the same shit. Like it was
Hmm.
all the same. Like
Hmm.
I heard about someone in London that the mother studied the same thing as my mom in Argentina. So it's like, oh, so it's basically kind of like what it fits for the moment, I guess.
Hmm.
And even though you're like, oh no, this is my call, it's not really your call. It's someone else's puts it there,
Yeah.
and you're like just eating it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sounds like
Yeah. I think that matches thematically with this show and the things we're talking about because children, it's natural for children to look to their parents, right, for guidance in life. But it also, I think there's a difference between setting an example and being a model for your kids versus telling your children to be who and what you are. And, you know, making those terms definitive for a child. I feel like there's a big difference. So I want to introduce our first guest, our first student of our first class of Kdrama School podcast. His name is Tobias Hauser, and he's a very funny stand-up comedian. He's originally from Austria, and he currently lives in Berlin, where he performs stand-up and runs his own show called Prism. The show I talked about this week is Sky Castle,
Yes.
and I know you watched like a little bit of the first episode at least, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I
what
had to
was your
stop.
experience like?
The subtitles were so bad that I couldn't. I actually had troubles following the plot because the subtitles were so bad that I stopped
Mm.
watching after like 20 minutes. Yeah. My favorite thing
Mm-hmm.
was one of the characters. He called his lawyer, or his lawyer called him, and he says, "Lawyer Kim." Is that a? That's not a
It
thing people
is.
do. Is it really?
Well, in Korean, you're never supposed to address somebody by their name if you respect them. You call them
Oh.
by their title. Yeah, like if they're a teacher, you call them teacher. You don't call them Mr. or Mrs. Kim or whatever,
I thought it was
like the way
just
they
bad
do it in public
subtitles.
school. No, that's how the language is. And The subtitles, were you watching it on Viki?
I was watching it on. No, it was something else. Rakuten, maybe.
Oh, Rakuten. Okay.
Yeah.
Rakuten is owned by, well, Rakuten owns Viki, so it's the same.
Okay.
And the way that Viki works is it's fan generated subtitles.
Hmm.
So the fans who are watching it will generate their own subtitles based on their understanding or knowing of the Korean language, whatever their ability may be. And then what Viki does is give them credits. So they don't have to pay a subscription fee or something like that.
Oh.
It's very cheap labor that
Yeah.
Viki is exploiting based on like fan love. But
Yeah.
that might also have something to do with the quality of subtitles. I yeah, I agree. Like the subtitles on Viki are not the most ideal, but honestly, like any translation is always going to have its problems or
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah. Yeah. I also just I don't know. I have a hard time. This is gonna sound very ignorant. What I'm about to say. I have a hard time remembering names,
Mm.
and it's even harder for me when they're names that I'm not familiar with. So
Hmm.
every time somebody referenced a character, I had no idea who they're talking about. Yeah, it's hard
Yeah,
enough if people are named Susan and Mary and Monica, but if they're names that I'm not familiar with, it's even harder for me.
it's hard for you to remember the name Monica.
Yeah, I mean, who's Monica? Which one of them is Monica? That's
Monica Geller on Friends. She's easy to remember.
but it would. I mean, it takes me usually like half a season before I remember everybody's name.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, this had 20 episodes, and I agree. It's hard to remember all the names, but like because in Korean, like people don't really address anybody by names; they address them by title. It's like I just
Hmm.
follow along based on title. It's like, oh, so and so is a teacher, so and so is a CEO, so and so is a lawyer, so and so is a doctor. You know,
Okay.
so and so is mom. They'll say mom a lot.
Okay.
But then in the subtitles they'll write out the names,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, I see the trouble that you're having, but I mean it's an amazing show. I wish you had watched at least up to the ending because the ending is so like
Is that
but
is there a
okay.
second
Hmm.
season?
No. A lot of Korean miniseries they don't have seasons.
Okay.
Um yeah. It's just one miniseries and then
Mm-hmm.
that's it. And
I see.
episodes can run from anywhere between like 10 to 150
Wow.
depending on what kind of show it is. But nowadays they have been doing more seasons, and that's a very novel concept to Korean TV. So, like with Netflix and these other Western streaming platforms and the Western fandom and Western demand, they're now offering seasons. So
Hmm.
there are a couple of there are at least a couple of K dramas with seasons now. Like
Okay.
one of the big ones is Kingdom. Yeah. But let me ask you,
Yes.
like this Sky Castle is about schooling, and it's about schooling and education and parental like helicopter parenting over children's education, their obsession with kids getting into one of the top 3 universities, which kept coming up over and over again with the acronym SKY, as you now know, stands for Seoul National, Korea, and Yonsei. And like what was like your school experience like in Austria growing up?
Um, I I went to school in the town I was born, and then for 4 years, and then I had to go to school in a different town because the towns are so small that there aren't enough students for a middle
Oh,
school in one of the towns. So you have like kids from 4 different villages going to school in a different town because it's just each of the towns are
wow.
too small. Um, yeah, and then I went to what you would call high school in a city, even not even a village anymore. That was exciting. I had to board
What
a
city?
bus every day. It was called Schwarz, and every time I write that on a because I was born in that because that's in that city because that's there's it's got a hospital. But every time I write that down, birthplace, I always write Schwanz, which is the German word for cock, because it's so similar to the name of the town, the city. Yeah, and then I went to university in Innsbruck, which is also close by. I didn't leave my state during the entire run of my education. Yeah, it's not very exciting. Not a very exciting story. Sorry.
I mean, the whole village thing you're talking about is actually familiar to me. I mean, South Korea right now, because of their declining birth rate, they've been shutting down a lot of schools,
Yeah.
especially in more rural areas, like some of these villages that you're talking about. So Korea has a lot of those outside of the city, like Seoul, Busan, Ulsan even. Outside of these places, there are a lot of smaller towns, and there are no children, so they
Hmm.
shut the schools. They shut the schools down, and it's actually very sad to see.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember also they had to. Some people were pushed to go to school earlier than they were pushed into like a year earlier just so there were enough students for one school level. So they
Wow.
they went to school a year earlier than they should have gone.
So they skipped a grade.
Well, they didn't skip any grades. They just instead of going to school at the age of 6, they went at the age of 5.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So they're technically slightly underdeveloped
Yeah.
f-
Yeah.
for that curriculum.
Basically. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's hilarious to be like, okay, the school is going to shut down if we don't put children there. We put like a 3-year-old in there. And
Maybe what if it's like one of the kids who's not even born, so his mom has to go to school with the baby in the
she has to
belly.
she has to carry it,
Yeah.
yeah, into the class with a bunch of other 6-year-olds. Yeah, no, I love that. Um, so okay, you went to university, and what did you study in college?
I studied political science and
Oh,
I did some English, but I never finished my English studies because
why?
I just don't like reading, and there was too many books I had to read. Especially there was this whole list of just like I don't know 50 books that you have to read for one single course, and I'm like, no, I don't want to read like Emily Dickinson or whatever. And no offense to Emily Dickinson fans, but yeah, just wasn't interesting to me. I like the linguistic stuff, and I like the
Uh-huh.
cultural stuff that
Hmm.
we learned. But I'm just not a. I'm I'm not into fiction that much.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Okay, that's fair
so
enough.
I never finished that. I just did did my master's in political science. That's what I did.
Okay, so that means you were actually pretty smart in school. That means you were good because
You sound surprised.
no, I'm not surprised. I'm just declaring a fact and an observation because most Americans don't know that in Europe, if you are showing promise as an intellectual, they will let you proceed and get a master's degree and even a doctorate. But if you don't show signs of intellectual prowess, then they'll be like, okay, just get your bachelor's and now you're good.
Well, actually, when I went to school, we didn't have that bachelor master system yet. We in
Oh.
Austria or in Austria, Germany, Switzerland, probably too. All the German speaking countries, they only implemented that. I don't know, maybe 15, probably 15 years ago. So I started
Mm-hmm.
before they implemented it, and I didn't even have the option of doing a bachelor. So like the equivalent of a master's degree was the lowest possible degree that you could get. Yeah,
Oh, so
yeah,
it's kind of like those kids, those 5-year-olds being forced to take on a 6-year-old curriculum that basically happened to you.
exactly. I was not qualified at all to get a master's degree, but there was no other option, so I just did it.
Right, there's no other option. And you get to say, I skipped a grade, right? it's force of circumstance, but you still get to say that. It's like, oh, you're like 6 years old and you have a bachelor's degree already. How did that happen? It's like, oh, well, my mother was forced to carry me
Yeah.
like as a fetus
In her
into
womb.
school in her womb, and I was able to skip all these years. Okay, that's interesting. But like, why did you attempt to study English literature if you had no interest in it, or if you didn't like reading?
Um, I don't remember. I think maybe just the expectation was to have more than one degree.
Hmm.
So I picked one that seemed easy and not like
Oh,
chemistry or math or
fascinating.
computer science. Yeah, but then once I had the one master's degree, I was like, "Man, I don't need why would I need a second one? That's
Uh-huh.
useless. Yeah, I don't even need
Yeah.
the first one. It's done nothing for me."
Yeah, it's just a piece of paper that helps you get a job, right?
Yeah, yeah, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's what's interesting about what you just said is that like you thought that these STEM positions or these STEM majors might have been difficult, and yet you chose English thinking it was easy, and yet there were 50 books to read, and you were like, I don't want to do this.
I, I mean, I'm just not good at like sciences, at like STEM stuff.
Uh-huh.
So if you read fiction, you don't have to get it. You
Right.
just read it and remember it. You just remember what you read, but you don't have to understand why does the apple fall from the tree. That's physics, right? Onto
Mm-hmm.
someone's head. Isaac Newton's head.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why is that? I'm. That's so dumb. Like, it's not dumb, but it's how dumb does he have to be to not realize what gravity is until an apple falls on his head?
It was a concept that was never established before, Tobias. You know?
Yeah, but
It's like
I'm sure
imagine the
he's.
first person to declare that the earth is round. It's the
Hmm,
same thing. It's like before that it was inconceivable that the earth was round, that there was even a planet called Earth. It was inconceivable until scientists began to make this realization
yeah, but
for all of humanity.
I mean, you can still see things falling to the earth. You don't need them to fall on your head to realize, oh, it's falling down. You just see them drop.
Is that true that it fell on his head, or is that just a myth?
Oh, it's probably just a myth. I don't know.
It's
Who
probably a
knows?
myth that you would read in English literature, in fact,
Yes.
probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then just
What's funny is, you make Newton's discovery of gravity sound so basic, and as if you yourself would have made this discovery yourself, not knowing anything about physics.
did he know anything about physics? I'm sure he didn't go to school for physics because it wasn't a thing back then, right? So I don't think you need to be
Uh,
educated in physics to discover
well,
gravity.
education goes back a long time, actually.
Yeah, but
There were schools, there were teachers and pupils for as long as time.
they
Yeah.
taught them like law
Okay. You don't
or
think they learned math? You don't
theology.
think
Math wasn't
well, they
invented. You don't
math wasn't math
No.
wasn't invented during
No.
Newton's time?
People didn't know how to count, how to do what's the root of 16. Do you think people knew what the root of 16 was? No.
What is the root of
It's
16?
4.
You know some math.
Is it? Isn't
It
it
seems like
the square root of it is 4 because it's 4 times 4 is 16, right? Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
believe it is.
That's
I believe it is.
yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. Like I mean, I don't know. Like your mother's a teacher, isn't
Yes.
she?
Yeah.
She's an educator. What
Mhm.
grade does she teach?
What subject or what do you mean by grade?
Oh, does it go by subject over there? I
Oh
thought it
yeah.
was
Oh
like grade.
yeah. No,
Okay, what subject?
she teaches English and geography, and
Oh wow. That's very different.
I think she does like because in Austria you learn about religion in school, There's no Sunday school or something like that. You taught like religion. It's a subject in school, and she does that as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and then she used to do sports as well, like physical education, or what do you call it? Sports.
Yeah,
Sports.
phys ed.
Phys ed.
We call it
Gym.
gym.
Yeah, but I mean, now she's she's no spring chicken, so she stopped doing that.
Wow, that's such a variety.
I know.
Your mother
Yeah.
taught a range. She's a versatile woman.
Mm.
Wow, English, the subject that you dropped as a university student, and then geography, which is very different, and then physical education.
Yeah, and religion.
Wow. What? And religion.
Yes.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Wow, what a versatile. So, okay, let me ask you, like, what was physical education like in school growing up?
It was the worst. It was when I hated the most. Like I didn't. Yeah, it was. I mean, I'm not a very athletic person, and I'm very unflexible. And I don't like to sweat, and I get out of breath. I lose my breath easily. I'm not good at keeping my balance. Yeah. I can't do the things that are required to be good at it. And also I just, as a little gay boy, I always felt uncomfortable around the other boys in the locker room. Yeah, so
Why?
I don't know, because everyone's naked. What if I was always worried about getting a boner? I mean, I never got one, but I was worried about it. Yeah. And which is also why I never took a shower, and everybody thought I was disgusting. I never showered after gym. I just put my clothes on. But also, I mean, I really didn't put in any effort, so I never, there was no need for me to shower. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah, you barely sweat, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm like Prince Andrew. I'm not like Prince Andrew at all. But he does. Is it Andrew or Edward? He doesn't sweat. He says he doesn't sweat.
There are a lot of people actually that don't sweat. It's really fascinating. Like, people say that Koreans don't sweat. That's not true. Like, they say Koreans don't have smelly armpits. That's not true. There are some people, in fact, there are some people who don't really sweat very much. Yes. It's like a genetic thing. There's some people whose armpits don't smell because they don't really collect bacteria down there. It's fascinating. I, unfortunately, don't have that gene. I wish I did, but it's a genetic thing.
Do you know Hillary Clinton doesn't sweat?
What?
It's a thing. Yeah, it's a thing I remember from, I don't know, from when she was, if it was 2016 or 2008, but she said, or people said she doesn't sweat. So debating isn't that tough for her, because unlike everyone else who's under the limelight of the TV stage, they're all really sweaty, but she doesn't sweat. Like, she doesn't, it just doesn't happen.
Well, good for her. Good for her for not looking all oily and greasy and shiny on screen.
One more thing to prove that she's not human, maybe.
Perhaps. That may be true.
Yeah.
Well, okay. What did you want to be when you grew up, like when you were a child? What was your dream?
When I was a child, I wanted to be a priest.
Why?
I think because, I mean, I didn't know that, I grew up in a village. There weren't that many professions for me to witness. So I knew there was a priest. You could be a priest, you could be a teacher. You could work in a store. And I think maybe I thought the idea of sex was so disgusting to me that I actually enjoyed, like, I liked the idea of being celibate, of like a Catholic priest who's not allowed to have sex. It was kind of, that was actually, that was a good thing about that job.
That was the attraction.
Yeah.
The celibacy was the attraction.
Yes.
Fascinating. Why was sex disgusting to you?
Because I was raised Catholic, so I think that just made me hate my own body and sex, and the idea of instilled a deep sense of shame in me about the topic of sex, and like every orgasm is like, ugh, it's. I have to take a shower afterwards because it's so. I feel so dirty. You don't have
You
that?
feel sinful. Um, well, I wasn't raised Catholic. I was raised
Mm.
Protestant, and yeah, there is Protestant Christian repression, of course, but I don't know. Like when I lost my virginity, I was 18. I actually lost it to a pastor's son.
Oh, is that song? Is that about you?
What?
The
What
song,
song?
the who is the son of a preacher man? Who sang that song?
I don't remember, but maybe so. Yeah, he was actually okay. So when I was like 15, I dated this kid, and yeah, we were very much in love. And then I only realized this recently, like 15 years later, I realized this, that I have deep self-loathing. And this might be associated with the Protestant
Hmm.
Christian repression. I had deep self-loathing, and whenever anybody shows me pure, unconditional love, I get disgusted by
Yeah.
that. And so I broke his heart. I broke up with him,
Mm.
and then I started dating his best friend, which I know, and
Who?
his best friend happened to be the son of a preacher man,
Oh.
and then I went and had sex with him for the first time. Which, can you imagine what it must have done to this poor kid who loved me so
Well,
purely?
did you
Like,
tell him? Did he know?
I didn't tell him, and I begged the guy that I was with not to tell
Mm.
him, and then like a week later the piece of shit told him, and I was like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
It's something I asked you not to do. And he was like, well, he's my friend. I was like, what, do you tell your friends everything? He's like, yeah, like that's big news. I was like, yeah, but I'm his ex-girlfriend, like,
Yeah.
you know.
It reminds me.
So
I once I. Oh, sorry. Did I interrupt you?
no, go
Okay.
ahead.
I had sex with the ex of a friend of mine.
Wow.
And the ex was like, you can't tell my ex, like he's not allowed
Yeah,
to know. And then
yeah.
I met up with my friend like a day later, and
Oh,
I had to lie to him about it because he knew we met up. He knew we like
yeah.
met, and just, like for dinner, he didn't know we had sex. But I had to like he asked me specifically, "Did you have sex with my ex?" And I had to tell him like, "No, I didn't. Of course not." And then his ex told him like a month later. So I was not only the guy who fucked his ex, I also was the guy who lied to his face about it. Yeah.
and those two are still friends, and you're friends with neither of them.
Well, I'm in touch with one of them sometimes. With my original friend, his ex is now kind of Instagram famous, so I can't mention any names. But yeah, he's like I don't know. He's got a few 100,000 probably followers. Yeah.
Is he Instagram famous in that little town in Austria?
No, that doesn't even have 100,000 people, let alone 100,000 Instagram users.
Oh, okay, good for him.
Also, they
Um,
were American, so it happened in New York. Wait, I shouldn't. Now I've said too much. I've said too
wow,
much.
there are definitely more than 100,000 people
Yeah,
in New York.
yeah.
Goodness, that's you like Americans. You tend to bone a lot of
I
Americans.
mean, it
This
was
is a
in New York.
trend.
Who else would I have boned other than Americans?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Isn't
I
it
mean
funny?
it came up frequently. You were like, "Oh, like you were on the road, and weren't you on the
Hmm.
like weren't you doing like a road trip in America with a an American ex or a boyfriend at the time?"
No, but I did meet during my road trip. At every stop of my road trip, I met up with somebody I had sex with at some point.
And that wouldn't force you into taking a hot shower afterwards and,
I
you know,
I had
praying with your
I had
rosaries.
sex with at some point. I didn't say I had sex with them at during the road trip because I had no shower. So I, I was just in a car.
You know what's so funny about calling calling, like, eating that fruit, the fruit of
The
knowledge of good
loom.
and evil, like, yeah, calling it evil, I found so ironic, because it's like, um, they have knowledge of what is good and what is evil, so they're
Hmm.
attaining morality. Why is that so sinful? Is my
Hmm.
question, right?
I've never thought about it. The only thing I
And yet you
remember
wanted
about
to
that
be a
story,
priest.
yeah, but the
Uh-huh.
only thing I remember about that story is that apparently the theory is that it wasn't an apple at all, it was a tomato, and it got lost in translation.
A tomato? Are you kidding me?
Why not?
The Italians would be freaking out right now, knowing that everything they make is made with the fruit that caused original sin. I mean, wouldn't that be a
Also,
shock to
yeah,
their system?
I think that theory doesn't make any sense because tomatoes don't come from the Middle East, right? They come from the Americas.
Also, they don't grow on trees. They grow on, like,
Yeah,
these
on a
weak
bush.
vines.
Well, you can still, I don't know. Maybe I'm also just confusing it because there's a German word for tomato which means paradise apple. So maybe I'm just confused
Oh,
about it.
really?
Yeah.
They call it a paradise apple?
Yeah, that's one of the words for it. Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. I love that.
Hmm.
I took only one semester of German when I was a freshman in college, and all I learned how to say was "Das ist ein Schönbaum,"
It's not even correct,
and
but okay.
exactly. How do you say it? How do you say it? The conjugation. What's the correct
Das ist
conjugation of
ein
that?
schöner Baum.
See, okay, that's my problem. So I kept saying "Das ist ein kalter Bier," and then
Hmm.
like, when I was in Berlin, like, the guy I was dating was like, That's actually incorrect." And I was like, "All right, well, how do you say it?" And he was like, "Das ist ein kaltes Bier." I was like,
Yes.
"Okay, thank you, thank you." I've been saying it incorrectly for almost 10 years. It's really good to know. Nobody corrected me. I even have a Swiss German friend, and he never corrected me. He just let me say it and giggled every time I said those things.
I think people
Yeah.
are, yeah, they're, I don't know why, because German people love to correct people. They love to
No,
correct
they
you when you're
don't
wrong,
actually.
but not about the
Well, you
language. Like
do.
if
I
you're,
mean, you're not even you're technically, you're Austrian. You like to correct
not just
people.
technically, yes.
The Germans that I encountered would never correct me. They would just stare at me, like, without blinking. That's what they would do.
Not about
Like,
not
I
about
was
like getting the language wrong, but about just facts. I feel like that's Germans love to do that. They love to be like,
facts.
actually, it was 1979.
Right. Actually, it wasn't an apple at all. It was a
It
tomato.
was a
Things like that.
tomato. It was a paradise apple.
In fact, I don't even know if that's correct, but that's my that's how I deduce things based on the
Yeah.
paradise apple thing. Got it. Yeah. Okay, so your dream was to become a preacher, man. We almost
Yes.
had sex then. That's a fact. Oh wait, no, I almost had sex with your son. That would have happened if you became a preacher. Well, I mean, no, a
What?
priest can't have
What?
children. I'm sorry. I'm confusing Protestants and Catholics right now.
It's
Protestant
also
preachers can have children. Yeah.
if I had a if I had a son, he would be like 10 now. I don't think he would be having sex with my son, hopefully.
Yeah, no. No, you're right. That's very
You're
inappropriate.
That's a weird timeline and a weird fantasy you've got going there.
Well, that wasn't a fantasy at all. That was just it was called a callback, which you would know if you were any good at comedy, but since you didn't study comedy in college. Well, okay, let me ask you this.
Actually,
What
one
are
more thing. I did
yeah?
one of the classes I attended in my English for my English studies was the linguistics of humor. So I, in a
What?
way,
That's
I did go
fascinating.
to school for comedy. Yes.
I guess you did. Wait, what does that consist of? The linguistics of humor.
It was like about like what makes a joke fun, not what makes a joke funny, but like what is just the concepts of when people think something's funny. And there's like a few different concepts. One of them is like if something unexpected happens. The other one is if something if somebody says something that you know is right, but other people don't know it, so like an inside joke kind of thing that doesn't, it doesn't necessarily have to be funny, but just the fact that it's an inside joke, that's what makes it funny. Yeah, that's what I remember from it.
Oh, that's so interesting. I love that. I love things like that. I heard this from an old friend. She was dating a guy, like a doctor guy, and he told her that when the brain finds something, like when you start laughing, it's oftentimes because the brain is in a state of like glitch. There's like a glitch that happens in the brain. Like the brain doesn't understand what's happening, and it causes one to like guffaw. You know, like when you're like laughing so hysterically, it's something so intensely funny.
Yeah.
It's like something in the brain, like the brain is basically having like a crash moment. It's not understanding or comprehending what's happening, and all you can do is laugh hysterically. And so I think that's sort of the key into like absurd humor, right? Like absurdist humor, And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. I love that. I love like learning about things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not fun if you want to be an audience member, but I mean,
to deconstruct everything you said on stage.
Okay, you made Linzer cookies for Julieta the other day.
No, I made them for myself, and she was allowed to eat one. Yeah.
She only ate. Did she leave some left over on the plate?
She did. Yes, and then my cat came and licked off the sugar, the icing sugar. Yeah.
That's cute. Yeah, Julieta does that. She never finishes anything on her plate.
It makes me so mad. Because she's always like, oh no, give me a little more. And then that bit that she wanted more, it remains on her plate. And then I have less food to eat because she wanted to have more that she didn't actually consume.
Well, why don't you do the good parent thing and say, you will not get more until you finish what's off.
Yeah.
Until you finish what's on your plate. Like, you think that's infuriating. We went to Palma together, and on that island that we were at, there was no, like, drinking water was very, very sacred. Like, all the tap water was disgusting because there are too many tourists there, very compounded, and so their plumbing is awful. So you're not allowed to drink their water because it's contaminated. So we had to buy water, and this girl she would leave like half a bottle full and then open up a new bottle, and she did this like 3 or 4 times, and then it was driving me insane.
Yeah.
Because when she met me at the airport, she was like, "Do you want some water?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm a little thirsty." And she gave me some water. I was like, "Where'd you get this?" And she's like, "I just got it from the bathroom." And I was like, "Are we allowed to drink the water here?" She's like, "Yeah, I drank it before." And then the next day we go to the restaurant, and then we were like, they were like, "What kind of water? Do you want sparkling or flat?" And we were like, "Let's just get some tap water." And he's like, "You were drinking tap water?" And we're like, "Yeah." He's like, "No, you should never drink the tap water here. It's really bad for you." And I was in such a state of shock and dismay and anger. And then we went and bought water, and then she was doing this, opening up 3 bottles and not drinking all of it.
Do you think it's because she forgets that there's something in the other bottle, or she just doesn't want it once it's sort of been broken into and then left standing?
I mean, who knows? Who knows the reasoning? I don't know. That would be a Julieta question. But I mean, besides that, she's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think she's really great. You guys saw a movie together.
Yeah, we watched. See, my memory is really bad. We watched 2 movies, and I don't remember which ones they were. But I had to convince her because she wanted to watch, like some like some. She's into shit like Hot Tub Time Machine. So like badly rated, highly sexist, and highly homophobic comedies from the like 2000s. That's the kind of shit she's into. And then I forced her to watch a horror movie, and she actually liked it. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. We watched.
fascinating.
I can't remember. It doesn't matter.
Let me then ask you some like flashcard questions.
Yeah, you better edit this together. This has been going on for so long.
How about you don't tell me how to do my fucking job on my fucking podcast and you just relax and enjoy your fucking self? A flashcard question would be like, let's say you are the mother, the protagonist on Sky Castle, and you find out that your husband has a child born out of wedlock with another woman, and they have a daughter, but he doesn't know that he has a daughter. Okay, like he never knew about this daughter, and that daughter is the rival and nemesis of your daughter.
I gotta
In
write
fact,
this down. This is like a fucking math question.
in fact, this born out of wedlock child, this quote unquote illegitimate child, is smarter than your daughter. She's way smarter. She does better in school than your daughter. Meanwhile, your daughter is costing you millions out of pocket, millions of dollars out of pocket for tutoring expenses.
Just
All
for
right?
tutoring. Just for the not for school. Just
For tutoring alone.
okay.
How would you react when you find out about this?
Wait, I'm the dad.
No, you're the mother.
How? Oh, but what? How does? I don't know that I have an illegitimate daughter.
You don't know that your husband has an illegitimate. I mean,
Oh,
no, you find out. You find out that your husband has an illegitimate daughter,
and
but
she's
your
better than
husband
my
doesn't
own.
know. She's better than your own.
Okay. What would I do? Just I would first of all I would curse myself for giving birth to a human to begin with. It's kind of her own fault. I mean, you know, you're having kids. You've got it. You've got
Uh-huh.
everything coming. You've got a big storm coming. It's, but yeah. But what do I have options? Can I murder the other one? Can I,
Oh,
or can I murder my own
yeah.
child and then pretend I'm going to murder my own child and then pretend that that the other one, my husband's illegitimate daughter, is my own? Um, we would
Oh,
have to
fascinating.
move somewhere else where people also don't know us, obviously, because
Okay. Uh-huh.
presumably people have seen my daughter and they know she doesn't look like the other one.
All right.
But yeah, maybe uh, is that a reasonable option?
Yeah. So you would kill off your daughter knowing that she's
A dumb
inferior to
bitch, yeah.
she's Okay. All right, so you would murder your child. Okay.
If it's a
That's good.
stupid child, I mean, yeah.
Well, I mean, she's not stupid. She's very ambitious and driven. She just happens to be ranked number 2, and this illegitimate child happens to be ranked number 1. In fact, in the show, the illegitimate child gets killed.
Really?
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
it was really close to what I was going to propose. But, I mean, she didn't
It
get killed for
was.
that reason, probably.
She did get killed for that reason
Oh,
because the
God.
illegitimate daughter was threatening to dethrone this quote unquote legitimate daughter and reveal to the father that she's the child, the love child of his ex-girlfriend. She was going to reveal it,
Oh.
and she was going to go into medical school and follow after his footsteps. When all of that was this legitimate daughter's dream. That's why she was so fucking driven,
Okay.
and she wanted to be third generation of daughter. Yeah. But yeah, the illegitimate child, quote unquote, gets killed off. And yeah, it was infuriating for me, actually. I really liked that character a lot. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
c'est la vie. Let's say you're the husband
Mm-hmm.
of the woman. So in the first episode, the reason why I say in the pilot episode it was so like ghastly and shocking is because the woman, a rich wealthy mother with a doctor husband and a son who just got into medical school, she blows her head off with a shotgun out in the middle of the field in the snow. And it's very dramatic. All right. So let's say you're the husband of the woman who blows her head off with your shotgun. because
Mm-hmm.
your son ran away from home
Mm-hmm.
and basically said he wants nothing to do with you and your husband. What do you think you would do?
First of all, kudos to my wife for choosing such beautiful scenery to kill herself in. I enjoy I enjoy that drama. Um, it's like a Kill Bill situation when Uma Thurman kills Lucy Liu. There, have you seen Kill
Huh.
Bill? They're in the
Of
snow,
course.
and then
Yeah.
there's blood spatter over the
Oh,
red
yeah.
blood spatter over the white snow. It's beautiful. A good
It is beautiful. Yeah.
aesthetic choice. Um, what would I do again? Uh, blame myself for marrying somebody. Would be seems like a reasonable option. You just don't do it. Don't get married. Don't have kids. Then you can't have dumb kids, and you can't have wives. Why did she do it again? Because the son ran away.
Yeah.
So once again, it's the children who are the fault.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't procreate. Yeah,
Okay. Just live alone or with your cat.
yeah. Eat your own cookies. Don't share your cookies except with your cat as well.
So let's say you're at the house of a neighbor, and all the other neighborhood families are gathered there, and you're one of the wives. You're one of the housewives, and you all go into the kitchen with the other mothers, and you start plating desserts, something that you love to do. And then you get into an argument with one of the mothers, and her reaction is pouring maple syrup down your face. How would you react?
Thank you. I mean, maple syrup is delicious. It's what a weird way to punish someone. It's like that, that's like that's like a if you're a sub in a relationship and you want your dom to punish you, quote unquote. So you're like provoking him so he'll slap you, but you're actually really into the slapping. It's not really a punishment. I mean, if it had been hot boiling fat, I wouldn't really enjoy it, or like a roux or a caramel or a brown butter. Um, but yeah, what kind of was she wearing an expensive dress? Why was this supposed to be?
Yeah, her hair was all made up,
Hmm.
her face made up. She was wearing a dress, she was wearing jewelry. They're at a party, a house party. She's all decked out. There are a lot of people there,
So everybody
and he's
saw.
humiliating. Well, the mothers saw, the
Hmm.
mothers that were in the kitchen.
Hmm.
Like one other mother saw. I mean, okay, so this wouldn't phase you at all, is what you're saying.
I wish that happened to me, and I'm not just because I like maple syrup. It also sounds kind of sexy. I
So,
may have a
so
new
this scene,
fetish.
yeah, this would have been a turn on for you. Okay.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is like more than 80% of Korean television series and dramas are written by women,
Oh
but
wow.
the majority of them, like 99% of them, are directed by
Hmm.
men. So there's this really interesting industry, like gendered industry standard
Yeah.
that exists in Korea.
Why
That's
do
very
you think?
fascinating.
Why do you think so? I mean, shouldn't be asking it like that because it shouldn't be unusual, but it's not the standard. Why do you think so many of them are written by women? Do you think there's a reason?
I think, some of the reasons are very typical, like just this notion that television is like a women's medium.
Oh.
Television is a domestic part of the house. Is like Lynn Spiegel, this historian, film scholar, TV scholar, writes about this. Um, like how TV became part of the home furniture, so people had to sort of like arrange their interior around the television, like a hearth, and the television programming and scheduling, all of that sort of try to match the rhythm of a domestic homemaker, a woman. And so television's always been gendered as female, including television programming. And when it comes to daytime drama or any kind of dramas that are soaps, like soaps. It's even the word soap, the soap opera. Like, reason why it's called soaps is because women do laundry with soaps. So it's like while they're doing laundry, they watch television to pass the time, that kind of thing. And so, because it was gendered female always, I think the Korean TV industry sort of really took that literally and went ahead. But when it comes to the so-called hard labor of film and TV production, right, like directing, they tend to exclude women more often than not, and they say directing is a man's job. Like, in that sense, it's very patriarchal and misogynist. But yeah,
you really did go to school for this.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I did indeed. Some of it is actually just me riffing, kind of like you with the tomato and
the paradise apple.
The paradise apple and the butter. Some of it is a little bit of that, but it's context clues kind of thing.
Okay.
So, okay. All right. Then one final question of this flashcard series. Let's say a friend and a fellow mother at Sky Castle is annoying the bejesus out of you.
Mm-hmm.
So you talk back, like you shut her down. You tell her off and then you walk away. And then she calls your name and you turn around. And as soon as you turn around, she kicks like a high kick right into your face. And her foot is close enough to touch your face, but it's not. It's like this close. And she measured it and timed it and angled it in a way that it's like perfectly about to kick you in the face, but doesn't quite touch you. What do you do?
Who is that woman? She sounds fantastic. Is that is that Christine Baranski? I don't know why Christine Baranski is the person I think of when I think of a woman in her middle age, but still being very nimble and being able to do high kicks. I don't know why. But yeah, I ask her for the yoga lessons or whatever she does. It sounds very good. It's got it going on. Yeah.
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 That wouldn't offend you or scare you. That would you would be in awe.
Yeah. How could you be mad at that? It's so skillful. And she didn't, she missed. Oh, she didn't miss. She meant to miss. So she didn't actually hurt me.
Yeah, it was a warning. It was just a warning to be like, don't mess with me. Because look at what I could kick your ass.
What kind of shoes was she wearing?
Sneakers.
It's less impressive. I thought she was in high heels.
It should have been heels.
Yes. Of course. I could do that in sneakers. Come on.
Okay. You're right. Okay, so there should have been some lessons from drag queens there to do high kicks and heels.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
There's something about sitcoms that's very comforting that you could keep returning to them over and over again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
You're the expert. You tell me.
Well, I mean, I may be, but my expertise doesn't matter because I'm asking you. Like, why do you keep returning to the Golden Girls?
I think it's like there's some predictability, and even if you hadn't seen the show, you can always tell like what the rhythm of each episode is going to be, when the jokes are coming in. It's just and I think predictability or stuff that we know, and familiarity, that's very comforting. That's why, like, when we need comfort food, we eat the foods from our childhood. We don't like try a new recipe to comfort us. We have our mac and cheese or whatever it is.
Yeah. Oh, I really like that.
It was deep. You're welcome.
Okay, well, now you ruined it by being a turd, being a prick. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Well, this is great talking to you.
Yeah, it was good seeing you. It's been a while.
It has been a while, and hopefully I'll be able to return to Berlin soon because I miss all of you. But yeah, I'll see you around elsewhere.
Yeah.
We'll be in touch. So next week, we're going to be talking about everybody's favorite show, The Goblin. It's also known as Guardian, the Great and Lonely God, or Tokebi in Korean. It was a huge hit back in 2016 into early 2017. And it will, like I said, it will contain spoilers, so please be sure to watch it in advance so you can follow along. I believe it's playing on Viki. If you're living in the U.S. territories, it's playing on Viki. And please follow our podcast at Kdrama School on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok for announcements and updates. Please subscribe to Kdrama School on our YouTube channel and visit kdramaschool.com for more information. If you want to submit questions, please email them to kdramaschool@gmail.com, and I thank you for your support.